Hello, and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar Why Children Bite and How to Best Respond. I am your host of this webinar and the founder and director of the Foster Care Institute, Dr. John DeGarmo. I am a consultant for foster care agencies and legal and law firms across the nation, as well as an author, trainer, and of course a foster and adoptive parent myself. The goal of this online training webinar is to increase awareness of why children in foster care might bite others as well as themselves. Our key objectives during this online training webinar are to increase your awareness of why a child might bite oneself or another person, as well as gain understanding of how to develop and implement strategies designed to best respond to those children who have challenges in regards to biting. Now, as a foster parent, most likely you have had a child or two, or perhaps even more, who have had biting issues while placed in your home. Perhaps a child bit you. Perhaps a child bit one of your own children. Perhaps a child bit one of their siblings placed in the home with you. Perhaps a child bit your spouse or somebody at daycare. Perhaps a child bit a caseworker or perhaps a teacher or a classmate at school. Perhaps a child is biting themselves. But why do some children bite? What causes these children to bite? What might those reasons be? Well, during this online training webinar, we're going to examine that, and we're also going to examine how to help stop that. Because let's be frank, I am sure you don't like being bit. I am sure you don't like children biting other children in your home. If you have had an infant in your house, if you had a baby living in your home, perhaps your own baby, your own toddler, or perhaps a toddler, an infant from foster care, most likely you have seen that child biting themselves at some stage during those early months. Now, some children might bite to relieve pain from the stages of, yes, you guessed it, teething. And teething can begin as early as 5 months of age. You see, during teething, it is a very painful feeling, a very painful sensation for that child. So in order to relieve themselves from that pain, they bite down on something, perhaps even themselves, perhaps even you. Some children might bite in order to satisfy the need for what is known as oral motor stimulation. Oral motor stimulation is a stage of development generally between the ages of 18 to 24 months where a child feels stimulated to bite, to clamp down with their teeth, with their mouth. Now, so many children in foster care are placed into foster care homes with anxieties and traumas. You know this to be true. Most likely you've seen those children placed in your home. Some of these children, due to those feelings of anger or fear, stress, tension, anxiety, some of these children might bite another due to the waves that are flowing over them. Waves of fear, waves of tension, of stress, waves of anger that are flooding through their young bodies, and they simply do not know how to process these feelings, process these emotions, process these anxieties. So as a result, they bite. They're unsure how to process these feelings, and as a result, biting is that result. Of course, as we noted last Last slide. Stress is something that most children in foster care struggle with every day. Well, stress can play an important factor in the lives of these children in foster care, and this stress may lead to biting. Now, for children in foster care, as we noted, the anxieties and stresses they feel may lead them to biting. They also may have anxieties and stress from school. Because as we've seen in other online training webinars here at the Foster Care Institute, as well as in the book, Helping Foster Children in School, most children in foster care are behind at least 18 months academically. They struggle with learning, they struggle with math and reading, they struggle with behavior issues. And as a result, they may bite because they're feeling the stress from school. Other times they may feel a stress or anxiety from a visitation, perhaps before the visitation or after the visitation. Perhaps the visitation did not go as well as they would have liked. Perhaps the parents did not show. Whatever it may be, there are sure to be anxieties and stresses related to visitations, to court appearances. Perhaps a child is feeling anxious or stressed about going to a therapy or counseling session. All of these situations may result in biting. On our online training webinar about abuse, as well as noted in the book The Foster Care Survival Guide, so many children in foster care are placed into foster homes due to some sort of abuse. Indeed, up to 5 million children in the United States of America alone each year are victims or are witness of some sort of domestic violence to them, or they witness it to somebody else in their own home each year. So many of these children have suffered some sort of abuse, and as a result, they may bite another. They may bite themselves as they hope to release the stress and anxiety suffered from the abuse. And then there are those children who just might bite simply to experience the sensation of biting. This is usually for infants or toddlers. If you have been a parent or a foster parent for some time, then you know that sometimes children do something just to get your attention. It may be something negative, but they're hoping, they're craving some attention in some fashion from you. Well, some children may bite to get that attention. They crave the attention of an adult, and they may bite you, or they may bite another person in order to get that attention, even if it is a negative fashion. Some children may bite in an attempt to fight back or get back at someone, if you will, who has picked on them, who has bullied them, or has hurt them in some way. This biting to them is a means of self-defense. Perhaps you've walked into a room where you saw two children arguing or fighting. Perhaps it's over a toy or a book. Perhaps it's over lack of attention. Perhaps it's due to stress or anxiety. Whatever it may be, these two children are quarreling in some fashion, and one bites another to get back at that child. So many children in foster care come from environments where they are surrounded by poor role models, surrounded by poor examples. Some of these children may try to imitate other children they've seen in their household. Biting as a form of communication? Yes, quite so. Children may bite as a form of communication. They may be trying to communicate to you that they are hungry, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're confused, they're concerned, even scared. But they don't have the words to do so. They don't know how to let you know. all the emotions and anxieties, even that feeling of hunger inside of them, they're biting to let you know how they're feeling. And then there are those children who may bite to feel strong, to feel in control. Now, if you have been bitten, or if you've had another child in your home who has bitten, and you've seen those teeth marks, perhaps on your own wrist or perhaps in the arm of a child, you know the pain that comes with biting. So, what do you do? How do you stop a child from biting you, from biting another person? What do you do? Well, for that child who already has issues of trust and attachment, how you address this situation of biting, yes, it can be difficult, it can be tricky. Let's look at what you should not do first. You should not have a harsh punishment for a child who is biting or alienate, because that harsh punishment may alienate or may push that child even further from you. Because as we saw in an earlier slide, many children in foster care do have issues of trust, do have issues of attachment. So when you lend out a harsh punishment to that child for biting, it just might push them away even further. Yes, you may sit there and want to just wrangle a finger in front of a child and just lecture them. Or that child might wish to argue with you and you feel like getting in the debate. No, no lectures, no debates. Save those for something else. You see, many children in foster care have never had that moral upbringing, have never had any sort of value system, and they've never been taught right or wrong. Or they may have a completely different value system than your own and your own family. So when a child bites you or another, try to remain calm. Yelling, shouting, screaming at the child who is biting is not going to help the situation. In fact, it might likely escalate the situation and make it worse. So many of these children who are placed in our homes, so many children who are coming into foster care have always been yelled at by a parent or by a sibling, by a relative, just yelled at day and night, night and day. Your house might be the first house where they've never been yelled at. So try to remain calm. Try to discuss the problem of biting in a calm fashion. Safety first is essential when dealing with a biter. If a child has bitten another child, the first thing you need to do is to separate the two children, perhaps in two different parts of the room or two different couches, perhaps in two different rooms. Make sure, ensure that the child who has been bitten is okay, is safe. Look over the wound and address the wound. Take care of the child who has been bitten. Give them first aid, if need be. Try to comfort them. Surely this child is confused who has been bitten, is upset, is hurting, may even be angry and want to lash back out. Take time to make sure that child is safe, that child is taken care of, that child is okay. Give them that first aid and try to comfort them before going on and dealing with a child who bit. After you've seen that the child who has been bitten has been taken care of, take time to consider why the child is biting. Take a moment to think about what is behind this action. Why does this child bite? Is this the first time, or is this a pattern of it? Is it an oral motor reasoning? Is it related to teething? Is it related to fear or anxiety? Does a child want your attention? Is it due to fighting back? What might that reason be? Before you go any further, consider the reason. And then it's time to talk. It is important you talk about what the child did when he was biting you or biting another. Ask him how he was feeling before he bit somebody or himself. What was going through his mind? Was he upset? Was he trying to relieve pain? Was he confused? Did he want your attention? Ask him what was going through his mind, and do so, of course, in an age appropriate conversation. Ask him how he can let you or somebody else know that he is angry before biting somebody else. The child needs to hear this from you. Biting is never acceptable. Biting is never going to be okay. Biting is not an appropriate action or a reaction. Again, talk to the child in age appropriate conversation. Talk to him about what is okay to bite. Food. What is not okay to bite? Other people. Observation is a powerful tool, and you need to implement that tool. Take time to observe the child who has a history of biting. Take time to observe and learn when he bites, where he bites, what situations is that child in. Stay close to that child when you see that he might be getting ready to bite somebody or he's being triggered to do so, and step in when necessary when you see a child might be getting ready to bite somebody. Step in and try to stop it beforehand. If you see a child is about to bite somebody or they have a history of biting, offer them something to do, some type of activities or some materials that might offer some sense of pain and a release from the tension, the anxieties, the discomfort, the pain that she might be experiencing. Perhaps offer some relaxing, soothing, calming music. Perhaps get a bottle of bubbles and allow the child to blow some bubbles. You know those squeeze balls that are popular at work when someone is feeling tension at work? Perhaps a squeeze ball is something you could give that child. Try to teach a child about deep breathing, trying to relax, counting 1 to 10 with their eyes closed. You may wish to consider offering the child some food or some drink that might offer some sense of relief and release from the discomfort, the tension, the anxiety, the pain that she might be experiencing. This might include very, very popular chilled teething ring. These are especially popular in babies and infants. A wet washcloth is something that is also common. Maybe a cold spoon for that child to bite down on or clamp down on. Maybe an apple or banana. Maybe a cold drink. Smoothie. As we have seen in other online training webinars, professional help is something you should never be afraid to ask about. You should not be embarrassed to call upon a trained professional. See, these trained professionals have a wide range of resources and tools to aid them as they help treat those who suffer with biting, suffer with anger issues, suffer with whatever might be ailing them in whatever fashion they might be. You are not. You are not the expert at everything. Sure, you may be the expert in some things, but taking care of a child who has biting issues, if you need to see a trained professional, please do so, and do so without embarrassment. Now, whatever you do, do not bite the child back. Now, this may seem ludicrous, but I can assure you there are those who believe that it is important to make the child experience what they are dishing out to another person, to experience how it feels to be bitten. So they might bite that child to show the child that, hey, this is how it feels. Do you like it? This approach is 100% wrong. Do not bite a child back. A child in foster care needs constant encouragement from you. This child needs you consistently praise him in all areas of his life. Let him know that you understand. You know how hard it is for him to remain calm and not bite somebody. You know it's difficult for him to remain calm and not to bite or lash out. And you know how hard it is for that child to model good behavior at all times. So when you see them doing that, praise. Children in foster care need to hear words of praise on a daily basis. Find something to praise that child every single day in some way and in multiple ways. As we've seen in several of our online training webinars here at the Foster Care Institute, and we go into it quite detailed in the book The Foster Care Survival Guide. One form of disciplining a child is with time in. Time in is a form of disciplining when issues of behavior occur, such as biting. When a child is placed in time in, the child is placed into close proximity to you. Time in allows that child to be near you or an adult instead of away, as is known in timeout. So when you see a child perhaps getting ready to bite somebody or has bitten somebody, however difficult this might be for you, try to implement a time in where that child is near you. And again, we go into further detail on this on our training webinar on discipline, as well as in the book The Foster Care Survival Guide. And I would encourage you to learn more about time in. Of course, consistency is something children in foster care rarely have before being placed in a home. So they need you to be consistent with your punishments and with the consequences that they face when he lies, when he's angry, and of course when he bites. What are the consequences going to be? Be consistent with that. When he does lie, when he is stealing, when he is angry, and of course when he is biting somebody else. And of course, use natural consequences as well. A child in foster care needs that constant encouragement from you. He needs you to praise him in all areas of his life. So find him in the act of not biting, and not only praise him for this, but reward him for his good behavior. When you see that he is maybe being triggered to bite and chooses not to, perhaps an ice cream cone, perhaps a cookie, perhaps a banana or an apple, perhaps 30 minutes of TV more, perhaps a book to read, perhaps going outside and playing some more, whatever it may be, but don't be afraid to reward him. Is it bribing? No. It is encouraging and rewarding good behavior. Forgiveness is a powerful tool. Forgiveness is something that we all need at some stage in our life. If that child has learned not to bite, if that child has learned that biting is wrong or he made a poor choice, he needs your forgiveness. Even if he bit you and it's still stinging, he needs you to forgive him. Very likely he has never been forgiven by a parental figure before. Your forgiveness might be the first time he has been forgiven. He needs to learn about the power of forgiveness. Your forgiveness is so very important. If you have watched the online training webinar on documentation here at the Foster Care Institute, then you know that documentation is essential when being a foster parent. If a child should bite you, if a child should bite another, if a child should bite himself while placed in your home, you need to document this. You need to document this in writing, document it in an email to the caseworker, document it in a journal of some fashion, document it in any fashion, and do it in multiple ways, and make sure that documentation is done in a fashion that is not emotional, not opinionated, not biased, just the facts of what happened. Document what happened beforehand, document what led to the child biting, document who the child bit, document the time, the date, the location, document what did you do after the child was bit. If somebody else was bitten, how did you respond to that? How did you bring aid to that child? Did you separate the two? Document what kind of consequence the child faced. Was it a time in or something else? Document how you had a discussion with the child and how that child responded. There is so much that you need to document, and then get that documentation to the caseworker as soon as you can. And keep another record of that documentation for yourself. Again, we go into the importance of documentation and how to do so in a complete online training webinar here at the Foster Care Institute. And I encourage you to check out that. Document, document, document. Those are three very important words as a foster parent. And I cannot stress to you enough the severe importance of documentation. Of course, you can find all of our online training webinars at the Foster Care Institute and with Dr. John DeGarmo. For much more on foster care, follow me on Twitter at Dr. John DeGarmo and at Facebook. And if you have questions about this online training webinar, other online training webinars, or questions in general about foster parenting or foster care, please email me at drjohndegarmo@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can print out this certificate when you're finished with this online training webinar. You know, being placed into foster care is a very scary thing for a child. In fact, if you ignore all the abuse and all the trauma and all the stress a child faces before being placed into foster care, it is traumatic just being placed into a foster care home. It is traumatic being placed into a home with new foster parents, a new family, if you will. Separation anxiety, confusion, fear, a list of questions. There is great trauma in being placed in foster care. The children's book, A Different Home, A New Foster Child Story, is an important book for children who are being placed in foster care. For this child has all those questions. Why am I here? When do I go home? Was it my fault? Will I ever see mommy again? And is confused and scared and cries herself to sleep. But by the end of this children's story, this child in her own words, recognizes that she is safe, she's in a different home, but she's going to be okay. This is a great tool and resource to pull off your shelf and read to a child who is first placed into a home, those first few days and weeks of placement, to answer some of their questions and ease some of their anxieties. You can find this book and all of these foster care books at the Foster Care Institute and where all good books are sold. Thank you for caring for children in need. Thank you for being a foster parent. Thank you for changing the world for these children. And thank you for taking time to watch this online training webinar. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.